In a world which is connected in every possible way, we take on the challenge for the next step forward. Say hello to a better mobility future, a mobility future for people, not cars.
For us, TUMI has been a window into the world, and that's amazing because we see people who are struggling with similar things, but we also see solutions. We also see promise. We see hope, and it's real.
We believe in innovation, knowledge, investment.
The aim is to support decision makers, act as planners, experts in the area of urban planning in how to change it into integrated planning.
For the organization, it's taking us to a place that we honestly never imagined we would be in terms of having the legitimacy, the credibility, the support to roll out a program, with the credibility. To me, that is something that you can't just get in your bank account.
We support urban leaders all around the world with innovative solutions on the ground, providing state-of-the-art know-how and mobilizing investments to achieve a more sustainable urban mobility future.
The initiative is an extraordinary program all around the world, helping cities become more livable and in a sustainable way. It's helping cycling, it's helping walking, it's helping compact urban development, and it's also helping innovation.
We have the future in mind. Together we transform urban mobility for the better of the world, for the better of all.
Welcome to TUMI TV. From the headquarters of GIZ in Eschborn, you can see the skyline of Frankfurt behind us.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to have you here.
When watching the video and seeing all the people close together, I recognized again COVID-19 changed our daily lives. And of course also the fact that events like today move to the digital world.
This is our alternative event to the conference in Leipzig, which we had to cancel due to COVID-19. Normally we meet at this time of the year in Leipzig at the International Transport Forum and the TUMI conference to meet with friends and colleagues to discuss challenges, new opportunities and joint collaboration. Back in 2017, urban mobility governance was discussed. In 2018, women empowerment. And in 2019, we discussed electric mobility. This year, we are going to focus on the impact of COVID-19 on transport. And we will show that the transformation of mobility is possible and that the green recovery is a must.
We are your hosts for today. My name is Anne Schebu.
And I am Armin Wagner.
On March the 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic, and 15 days later, nearly 2.6 billion people were under lockdown around the globe. A critical but consistent effect emerging in this crisis is public transport is dramatically and negatively affected by the measures to fight the spread of the virus. Public and private transport companies are suffering never-before-seen losses in turnover, scrapping away at the foundation of mobility options for people, but also harming critical supply chains. Job losses, diminished public finances and the availability of essential goods for people are threatening livelihoods more and more even day. And remember, these consequences are not distributed equally. Beyond the vulnerable age and health groups, it is also women that may be hit particularly hard. Transit agencies have responded to the reductions and shutdowns of their operations by developing safety measures for the way forward, such as providing protective gear, equipment and disinfection to people and vehicles. Health checks for drivers and passengers, as well as reduced vehicles' capacity, have been implemented. In order to manage demand, staggered access to public transport stations is being trialed in Beijing. In addition, cities are looking for ways to put their fleets to good use and satisfy other urgent transport needs during this pandemic. For example, a TUMI partner city in Bangladesh, the city of Singra, has repurposed their e-rickshaw taxi fleet to now supply citizens with essential goods during the lockdown. On another note, the pandemic has had a strong effect on shifting people's mobility behavior. The number of cyclists is growing worldwide. Cycling has become a key solution for essential and daily travel to avoid confined spaces, retain a safe distance to other travelers, and it even contributes to a healthy immune system. Walking has equally seen a rise in cities. Many cities have taken swift action to reinforce the modal shift undertaken by its citizens, of which the most prominent global trend are pop-up bike lanes. Some great examples today are Bogotá, who have set up a network of emergency bike access ways, or even here in Germany, where Berlin made sweeping changes by setting up a network of temporary bike lanes. But it doesn't stop there. Many other cities such as Tirana, New York, Brussels, Philadelphia and others are following this. It is of utmost importance that we all emerge as more resilient societies and that we can link the economic turnaround with our global climate ambitions. Unintentionally, many of these measures enacted against the pandemic have caused GHG emissions and air pollution to drop. However, these positive effects may be simple blow-away if our post-COVID world follows in its predecessors' footsteps. We need to make sure rescue plans and aid packages and transport are supportive of a climate-friendly and safe mobility future. As a famous saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste. It is our time to innovate, and whether it be through digital or physical solutions, we need to ensure sustainable, attractive and safe transport will be a lasting legacy of the COVID-19 crisis. Today we will be focusing on COVID-19 and its impact on mobility. How have cities and governments responded to the crisis? How does Corona affect the public transport systems? What does it mean for the supply chain of food, medicine and many other products? And what kind of future could there be for mobility post-COVID-19? Let's have a look at how COVID-19 impacted the regions around the globe. We will engage with high-level guests from around the globe, starting with partners in Asia, then focusing on Africa and Europe, and then from the afternoon on, we are going to zoom in on the American continent. We invite you to discuss with us, so please feel free to send us your questions and comments via email, Facebook and Twitter using #TUMI TV. Our experts will answer during the Q&A sessions. And if you are ready to test your own knowledge on sustainable mobility, then I have something for you. Visit quiz.transformative-mobility.org and use the chance to win a surprise. Stay tuned for more. Now, let's start with the conference.
To drive the global transport transformation, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ, launched TUMI at the Habitat 3 conference in Quito in 2016. TUMI is the ministry's central implementation initiative in the transport sector, linking both to climate and urbanization. The goal is to support cities in designing sustainable transport systems. 11 partner organizations are part of TUMI. ADB, CAF and KfW as development banks, the city network C40 and DCLAY, think tanks such as ITDP and WRI, as well as global organizations such as SLOCAT and UN Habitat. TUMI is managed by GIZ and supported by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development.
COVID-19 was first detected in China and has spread rapidly to other countries. Many countries in Asia have imposed local or national lockdown and curfew measures. While China is getting back on its feet, in India 1.3 billion people are under nationwide lockdown to contain the spread of the coronavirus. While the economy and the transport sector is almost at a complete standstill, people are experiencing completely new perspectives. The Himalaya is visible for the first time in many years. So how can Asian societies use the positive images of cleaner cities? What are mobility solutions which will allow the necessary movement of people and goods without jeopardizing the positive impact of less traffic? Our journey begins in Bangladesh in Singra, which is located in the Midwest about 6 hours by car from the capital of Dhaka. Our partners sent us some impressions from there. Let's have a look at how COVID-19 changed people's life over there. Since then, COVID-19 has changed Singra, and the citizens were confronted with the same restrictions that many others are feeling right now. Faced with this challenge, the mayor, Mr. Zannatul Ferdous, transformed the taxis meant for people and began delivering essential goods to the people. This sort of innovation allowed the basic foodstuff as well as necessary public information to be easily spread. I'm looking forward to hearing now Mr. Mayor Zannatul Ferdous.
Assalamu alaikum. COVID-19 করোনা ভাইরাস থেকে সৃষ্ট বৈশ্বিক মহামারী মোকাবেলায় এই মুহূর্তে বিশ্ব স্বাস্থ্য সংস্থার নির্দেশিকা মেনে চলা অতি জরুরি। সামাজিক দূরত্ব নিশ্চিত করার লক্ষ্যে আমরা মাননীয় প্রতিমন্ত্রী আলাজ অ্যাডভোকেট জুনায়েদ আহমেদ পলক এমপির পরামর্শে
ধন্যবাদ জানাই এবং কৃতজ্ঞতা প্রকাশ করি জার্মানি সংস্থা GIZ-কে। তারা সারা বিশ্বের মধ্যে 10টি সিটিকে বেছে নিয়েছিল, তার মধ্যে তৃতীয় হয়েছিল আমাদের সিংড়া পৌরসভা। সেখান থেকে আমরা তুমি চলোর সঙ্গে যাত্রা শুরু। সারা বিশ্ব আজ করোনা ভাইরাস মহামারীতে বিপর্যস্ত, বাংলাদেশ তার বাইরে না। বাংলাদেশের নাটোর জেলার সিংড়া উপজেলার সিংড়া পৌরসভায় আমরা সরকার যে নির্দেশনা দিয়েছেন, সরকারের প্রশাসন বিশেষ করে স্বাস্থ্য মন্ত্রণালয়, পুলিশ প্রশাসন সহ যেভাবে মাঠ পর্যায়ে কাজ করে যাচ্ছে, ঠিক বাংলাদেশ সরকারের স্থানীয় সরকার মন্ত্রণালয়, পৌরসভাগুলো একইভাবে আমরা কাজ করে যাচ্ছি। সিংড়া পৌরসভায় প্রথমত ধরা পড়েছিল 5 জন পজিটিভ রোগী, 5 জন পর্যন্তই সীমাবদ্ধ আজ পর্যন্ত। এখন পর্যন্ত নতুন করে কোনো COVID-19 পজিটিভ রোগী আমরা শনাক্ত করতে পারি নাই।
What are you doing as mayor to address this COVID crisis?
করোনা ভাইরাস পজিটিভ রোগী বাংলাদেশে পাওয়া গেছে সেদিন থেকে জননেত্রী শেখ হাসিনা সরকার যে নির্দেশনা দিয়েছে, বিশেষ করে আমাদের সিংড়ার মাটি ও মানুষের প্রিয় সন্তান আলাজ অ্যাডভোকেট জুনায়েদ আহমেদ পলক যে নির্দেশনা দিয়েছেন, পৌরসভার সকল জনপ্রতিনিধি, সাধারণ নাগরিক, সচেতন নাগরিকদের নিয়ে আমরা কিন্তু এই করোনা ভাইরাস মোকাবিলার কারণে আমরা প্রত্যেকটি আমার পৌরসভার 12টি ওয়ার্ডে কমিটি গঠন করেছি। আমাদের পৌরসভা ওয়ার্ড ভিত্তিক 12টি কমিটি এবং পৌরসভা একটি কমিটি করা হয়েছে, সেই কমিটির মাধ্যমে আমরা কাজ করছি। পাশাপাশি আমরা কিন্তু একটি স্বেচ্ছাসেবক কমিটি গঠন করেছি, যে কমিটি প্রতিদিন আমরা বিভিন্ন কাজে তাদেরকে আমরা কাজে লাগাচ্ছি তাদেরকে। তো যখন গণপরিবহন বন্ধের ঘোষণা আসলো, আমরা কিন্তু সরকার যেদিন বলল তার আগের দিন আমরা পরিবহন মালিকদের নিয়ে বসে আমরা কিন্তু গণপরিবহন বন্ধ করেছি। দোকানপাট বন্ধ করার সরকারের সিদ্ধান্ত আসার আগের দিন কিন্তু আমরা মিটিং করে আমরা কিন্তু দোকানপাট বন্ধ করেছি। আমরা প্রথমত সিংড়া পৌরসভায় রিক্সা বন্ধের জন্য আমরা রিক্সাওয়ালাদের কাছে আপনি দেখেছেন আমি অনুরোধ করেছি, তাদেরকে প্রথমে আমরা খাবার দিয়ে তাদের কিন্তু ঘরে পাঠিয়ে দিয়েছি। আমরা প্রত্যেক মহল্লায় আমরা স্বেচ্ছাসেবীরা গিয়ে আমরা কিন্তু লিফলেট বিতরণ করেছি। করোনা ভাইরাস থেকে বাঁচতে হলে কী করতে হবে, করোনা ভাইরাস হলে কি করতে হবে আর করোনা ভাইরাস যেন না হয় তার জন্য কি করতে হবে আমরা কিন্তু জনগণকে সচেতন করেছি।
Mr. Mayor, we know that in Bangladesh now, lockdown situation remaining. In this situation, TUMI transport service is playing a role here, no doubt. But what is the role of TUMI tackling this COVID crisis?
ঢাকায় কিন্তু সর্বপ্রথম বাংলাদেশের মধ্যে ঢাকায় সবচেয়ে COVID-19 পজিটিভ রোগী বেশি। আমার 12টি ওয়ার্ডে যে কমিটি আছে, যে কোনো মানুষকে আমরা এতখানি সচেতন করতে সক্ষম হয়েছি, বাইরে থেকে কোনো মানুষ যদি আসে সঙ্গে সঙ্গে এই কমিটির মাধ্যমে আমাদের কিন্তু এই তুমি চলো কল সেন্টারে ফোন চলে আসে যে আমরা কিন্তু সঙ্গে সঙ্গে পৌরসভার পক্ষ থেকে সেখানে দিয়ে তার বাড়িতে আমরা হোম কোয়ারেন্টাইনের ব্যবস্থা করি। সে যদি না মানে আমরা তাকে কিন্তু এই চলো পরিবহনের মাধ্যমেই কিন্তু আমরা তুলে নিয়ে এসে আমরা নিজস্ব হোম কোয়ারেন্টাইন যেটা আমাদের নিজের সরকারিভাবে আছে সেখানে কিন্তু আমরা তাকে ব্যবস্থা করি, 14 দিন থাকার ব্যবস্থা করি এবং খাওয়ার ব্যবস্থা করে দিই। এই চলোর আমার মোট 12টি পরিবহন, তার মধ্যে 2টি অ্যাম্বুলেন্স। এই অ্যাম্বুলেন্স কিন্তু আমরা ফ্রি সার্ভিস দিচ্ছি পৌরবাসীর জন্য। পাশাপাশি এই তুমির বাকি যে 10টা গাড়ি তার মধ্যে 1টা গাড়ি কিন্তু দিচ্ছি আমাদের ডাক্তার পরিবহনের জন্য। ডাক্তার, নার্স, স্বাস্থ্য খাতে যারা যে স্টাফগুলো আছে তাদেরকে পরিবহন করে। এই পৌরসভার মানুষরা যেন স্বাস্থ্যসেবার ক্ষেত্রে ডাক্তার নাই, নার্স নাই, আসতে দেরি হচ্ছে, এইটা যেন সমস্যার সম্মুখীন না হয়। যার কারণে কিন্তু আমরা এই তুমি চলার একটি গাড়ি আমরা এই স্বাস্থ্যসেবার কাজে কিন্তু আরেকটি গাড়ি আমরা নিয়োগ করেছি। নিম্নবিত্ত অসহায় মানুষ যখন খাবার সংকটে যাচ্ছিল তখন কিন্তু আমরা এই তুমি চলোকেও কিন্তু কাজে লাগিয়েছি। আমরা এই তুমি চলোকে কাজে লাগালাম যে হোম ডেলিভারি। আমাদের কল সেন্টার আছে, তুমি চলোর কল সেন্টার আছে। এই কল সেন্টারে সাধারণ নাগরিকরা ফোন দিবে, আমরা বাজারের তালিকা করব, বাজার দোকান থেকে বাজার করে এই রসিদ মূল্যে আমি কাস্টমারের কাছে পৌঁছে যাব, নাগরিকের কাছে পৌঁছে যাব, রসিদ বুঝে মূল্য পরিশোধ করবে, তার পণ্য বুঝে নেবে। এই তুমির চলোর যে কল সেন্টার সেখানে কিন্তু আমরা আরেকটি হটলাইন আমরা স্থাপন করি, যেখানে শুধুমাত্র ওই মধ্যবিত্তরা ফোন দিবে, তাদের সম্মান বজায় থাকবে। এইগুলো কিন্তু আমরা রাতের আধারে তার বাসায় কিন্তু আমরা এই তুমি চলোর মাধ্যমে কিন্তু আমি নিজে ড্রাইভ করে কিন্তু তাদের বাসায় খাদ্য সামগ্রী পৌঁছে দিয়েছি। আমি মনে করি জার্মানি জিএজেড সংস্থা এই তুমি প্রকল্পটা পৌরসভায় যদি না থাকতো আজকে করোনা ভাইরাস মোকাবেলায় যেরকম আমি মনে করবো সিংড়া পৌরসভা সফল।
You all know that COVID situation has no specific time period. It can be very long. So in this situation, is Singra municipality taking any long-term plan after the COVID crisis?
সিংড়া পৌরসভার পক্ষ থেকে ইন্টারনেটের মাধ্যমে যেন আয় করতে পারে, যেরকম আউটসোর্সিং করতে পারে, আমরা কিন্তু আউটসোর্সিং শেখানোর একটি প্রস্তুতি আমরা রেখেছি। তাদেরকে আউটসোর্সিং যে যারা ইচ্ছুক আগ্রহী তাদেরকে আমরা কিন্তু এই আউটসোর্সিং শেখানোর আমাদের পরিকল্পনা আছে। আমাদের পরিকল্পনা আছে মেয়েদের হাতের কাজ শেখানো, সেলাই প্রশিক্ষণের ব্যবস্থা আমাদের মাথায় পরিকল্পনা আছে এবং আমাদের সেলাই প্রশিক্ষণ আমরা ইতিমধ্যে সেট আপ দিয়ে রেখেছি। আমরা যেজন জননেত্রী শেখ হাসিনা কিন্তু মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রী নির্দেশ দিয়েছেন আমাদের যেন 1 ইঞ্চি কৃষি জমি যেন পতিত না থাকে। আমরা কিন্তু যুবকদের, বেকার যারা তাদেরকে আমরা উদ্বুদ্ধ করব, আমরা কৃষি পণ্য যেন আমরা রোপণ করতে পারি, সেখান থেকে কিন্তু আমরা কর্মের মধ্যে থেকে মানে আমরা কৃষি পণ্য উৎপন্ন করে আমরা কিন্তু সেখানে বেকার জীবন অবসান ঘটাতে পারি। আমরা পাশাপাশি জার্মানি জিএজেড সংস্থাকে আমরা অনুরোধ করব, আপনারা যে প্রজেক্টটা আমাদেরকে চলমান রেখেছেন এই প্রজেক্টে যদি আমরা এখন 12টা গাড়ি আছে, আমাদের 12টা গাড়ি 15 জন স্টাফ আছে, মানুষকে আমরা কর্মের ব্যবস্থা করে দিতে পারবো। তুমি চলোর যে ইলেকট্রিক ভেহিকেলগুলো আছে এগুলো কিন্তু আমি মনে অনেক নিরাপদ। তুমি প্রকল্প যদি আমাদেরকে এই প্রজেক্টটা যদি আরও বৃদ্ধি করে, গাড়ির সংখ্যা যদি আরও বেড়ে দেয়, তাহলে আমাদের এই বেকারদের কর্মসংস্থান হবে, পাশাপাশি জনগণ নিরাপদ পরিবহন ব্যবহার করবে।
Viewers, we hope this COVID crisis will get rid of very soon. We are waiting for a new world. We are waiting for COVID-free world. Till then, stay home, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you for this inspiring story. Good to hear that the vehicles are being put to good use and ensuring the safety and food security of your citizen. Singra and Bangladesh as a whole has been able to come together and ensure everyone stays safe. I do hope that the essential services as well as information campaign will help everyone in the long run. By the way, do not forget to test your knowledge. Visit quiz.transformative-mobility.org and use the chance to win a surprise. And if you have some questions or comments, please send them to us via Facebook, Twitter, or in our Teams forum. Throughout the day, experts are here to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. To continue, we are hopping southeast. It's my great pleasure to introduce His Excellency Sok Sangwa, Deputy Director of the Tourism Industry Department in Cambodia. He is deeply involved in the protection of cultural heritage sites in Cambodia. Over to Cambodia.
Well, we know well that the coronavirus, COVID-19, has actually created many negative impacts in different sectors. Concerning here in Angkor, in Siem Reap, in Cambodia, one of the biggest impact that we have witnessed is, of course, in the tourism industry, where thousands of jobs has been suspended due to the closure of the international borders. But in the same time, if I may say, we have also observed some positive side of the COVID-19 is, of course, the explosions of a number of bicycle visitors coming to the park daily, number of people coming to do the joggings and to walk around the park. It is, of course, I think a great opportunity, if you can say, for the local living in Siem Reap, but also for the regional tourism, where people from different provinces, such as from Phnom Penh, from Battambang, coming over the weekend for enjoying the park and riding bicycle, in fact. So, as the Deputy Director General of the APSA Authority, so the authority in charge of the conservation and development of Angkor, I am thrilled to actually see that what we have been working on since these few years, so like developing infrastructure for bicycle track along the roads, track in the forest, is actually helping out the people, is serving the people to come and enjoy the visit in the park. Of course, I do really hope that even though after the COVID-19, that the current trend that we're observing now will continue, where people will still be coming to bike into the park, where people are coming to walk around and enjoy the Angkor atmosphere. And as the Deputy Director General of APSA Authority, I will, of course, take necessary measure to ensure that this will be able to continue. Now, what we have learned also during this COVID-19 period is that, in fact, with this explosion of a number of bicycles, this massive number of people coming to the park, we do realize that our existing infrastructure might not be enough to support such amount of people, where, of course, despite the amount of vehicles from visitors isn't as much as doing before, but we still see some area, some traffic jam, as you might see at the gate over there, where we see that we have still to be careful when we drive in the evening time, where people are going back to the town. So meaning that we really have to rethink on how to better offer our services in terms of pedestrian area, in terms of bicycle area. And of course, so meaning that after the COVID, where more and more vehicles will be coming, we will have to increase this carefulness. I think the question raised clearly about the cohabitation between cars and bicycle. So this also make us open and welcomes all partners from the national point of view in terms of local authority, in terms of ministries, but also with the international partners from organizations, from international institutions in terms of developing together framework for green mobility, in terms of maybe looking into a partnership for grant or for development and so on. So meaning that we have to rethink the model of mobility, where we should be ready after the COVID, where we maybe think about the new normal, is the new term that we are using, so that we could be even better to welcome all of you biking in Angkor or having a walk in Angkor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for showing us these impressive impressions from Cambodia. Thank you very much, His Excellency Song Sok Sangwa, for these pictures from Cambodia and showing us how important bike infrastructure is, even at the World Heritage Site as Angkor Wat.
Let's have a look at the east of India to Bhubaneswar, the state capital of Odisha. Roughly 1 million inhabitants live there. GIZ India is working there successfully for years, also in the mobility sector. One result is MoBus, a new offer by the local public transport operation Capital Region Urban Transport, also called CRUT. These buses were used during the corona outbreak and the lockdown to supply the population of Bhubaneswar with food and sanitary equipment. Now we have a chance to speak with Arun Bothra. He is the Chief Managing Director of Odisha State Road Transport Corporation and Managing Director of Capital Region Urban Transport Bhubaneswar. Welcome, Mr. Bothra. Please tell us a bit more on how CRUT reacted during the corona crisis.
India is a very big country with 130 crore population. It was very essential for the government to put in place strict regulations, strict lockdown, as compared to other countries, I would say, because of our size, our population size, the level of literacy, level of awareness, compliance to the laws. So that's how I feel that lockdown in India has been very strict. I know that as compared to other countries, but you will also appreciate that our rate of infection as well as deaths have been substantially low as compared to even the most advanced countries in the world. Now, how these restrictions have affected the life in cities? Of course, they have affected quite a lot. Life is totally out of gear, but then we are right now in transition phase. Lockdown is in place. Most likely it will be lifted in phases. So we are not, we can't say how long it is going to go, but of course life has substantially changed because people are still inside, shops are closed, and like for example, public transport is not moving at all. How it will affect in long run, see that depends basically how soon we are able to find a treatment, a vaccine for the virus. For example, if tomorrow we are, somebody comes up with a effective vaccine or a treatment, then maybe life can be back to normal or back to close to normal in the next 6 months to 1 year. But supposedly we are unfortunately we are not able to get that kind of treatment, then life is of course going to change substantially all over the world, not only in India. Then we have to find new ways of meeting, new ways of traveling, going to, for example, going to restaurants, going to malls, shopping. Then things are going to be very, very different, I would say. How much it will be and what exactly is going to be, that's pretty difficult, but yes, it will be substantially different from, say, November 2019. I would like to answer this question in two parts. What we did before lockdown started and how we have responded after the lockdown. Let me tell you, Odisha is one of the first states in India, and I would say the first geographical area around the world which responded to COVID crisis. Our government, and of course we as a part of the government, anticipated this problem very early. We started cleaning and disinfection of our buses and VQSs very early. When the buses were still operating and people were traveling in the buses, we started social distancing norms in the buses. Those were the times when somehow the bus service was running and things were little normal as compared to, of course, now. But then when the lockdown started and totally our service was totally stopped in the interest of people, after that also we have been able to serve the society in a little different way. For example, our buses are being used for the emergency services now. We are helping medical professionals. We have a dedicated emergency service 104. The staff of dial 104, they travel in bus morning and evening shifts. Then our BQSs, we are using them because the government required, our municipal services authorities, they required vending zones for vegetable dealers because the regular vegetable markets are very crowded, as you know. So we wanted vegetable dealers to sit because they have to continue for the people, but they have to sit separately and in a proper, neat manner. So our BQSs, because anyhow bus service is not running, now they are being used by the vegetable vendors where they are serving the people, and in a way we are also serving the people still. Then the zones which were contained because some infected people were found there. Our buses are being used to sell groceries, to ferry essential items. So no bus has been active even during the lockdown in serving people. And we have a very good creative team when the bus service is stopped. So because we did not have much of work promoting our own services, so they have been engaged in creating robust games to help people getting the use of lockdown because people are inside the houses, we know. So of course they are doing a lot of other activities, but we also thought to add to it by adding some robust games, puzzles and crossword puzzles and these kind of things to make them happy and make life easier as much as we can. We had our meetings and it was decided to put in a kind of emergency plan in place immediately. Initial meetings, we were very clear from the day one that being a government company and being a public sector company, we have to keep our financial interest on the backseat. This is the time, this is the crisis where the interest of the people, interest of the society has to be on the forefront. So we knew very well that by putting norms like social distancing, by spending money on cleaning of the buses, disinfection, it will be financial burden on us. By providing safety gears to all our staff. These were financial burdens which we never anticipated initially. But we were very sure from the day one that this is something which we cannot ignore. And maybe because we are a government company, we had more liberty financially. We were not really bothered about the losses mounting on us. Then also because anybody in Bhubaneswar will tell you, Bobus has come up as a brand which people think it is their own brand. Actually, our name is Bobus, my bus. And people really love this brand and love the company. So we also had a moral responsibility to see that the interest of the people, the Bobus has to chip in, has to do things which doesn't allow spread of virus and take the safety and security part of the people as well as our staff as the most important priority. So that was the recipe, I would say, which helped us initially. And we, because we are part of the government, it was easier for us to know the policies, what is being done. And at some point of time, we were even consulted by the policymakers about when the bus should start, when the bus should not operate, how many people should travel. So these things the decisions were taken in after taking our inputs. It always helped us to implement them as soon as possible. And the most important factor all through in our mind has been the safety and security of our commuters and our staff. One more thing which I would like to highlight, that because this is a very, very, very unique kind of situation and we are not the experts to know really the threat and the solutions, so we consciously decided to give liberty to our the domain experts to take decisions about the operations and how to disinfect the buses, when to do, how many times. So these decisions were taken mostly by the people who are into operations. So I think that also helped us rather than imposing decisions, because it was matter of life and security of our staff as well. We took decisions in with their consultation. I think that helped Because our people, like why I mentioned it specially, because many private bus operators are not able to operate because the drivers and other staff, what I understand, what I'm told, are not willing to work. Whereas our people are, even today, when we ask them if it is required, they are very much willing to work because they understand that this is their company. The company has kept their interest on the forefront and keeping the interest of the company and the financial interest on the backside. Running public transport company was never easy. Almost all the public transport companies have not been doing really well financially, as we know, around the world. We also had the same issue. I would like to mention that in May 2019, our ridership was 33,000 per day. And with a lot of effort of our team, with different strategies and hard work, we brought it to 1,31,000. That was our peak, I would say, and our average was more like 15,000 around before this corona crisis struck. And then from that top, that level of achievement, we have come to a rock bottom. So things are difficult as of now, we understand, and they are likely to be difficult for some time. Now, how this can be turned into an opportunity, it depends, as I mentioned earlier, how soon the humankind is able to find the solution to the crisis, is whether we are able to find a vaccine, whether we are able to find a treatment for this virus, that mostly will depend on this. However, two things I can see as silver linings. One, the ultimate and one of the main objectives of public transport is to save the environment, support the environment. Now, this particular crisis has really made people aware of environmental crisis. Because earlier when we used to say that vehicular pollution is a threat to the environment, it was more or less a theoretical thing for many people. People would not understand that how it is going to impact if the vehicular transport is less or there is no vehicular transport, for example, right now. But in the last 1 month or maybe 2 months, people, when they see the clear skies, they are able to see the mountains from a distance. Everybody understands that yes, the threat to environment from vehicular transport was real. So there's a consciousness. I think people will understand more and more that vehicular pollution has to be less, and that may have some kind of favorable tilt in the policy and the mood of the people towards the public transport. That's part one. Two, we, particularly in India and particularly us as a company, we have not been able to go digital much till now. A lot of our people, they buy tickets in cash, and that somehow, as we would understand, leads to pilferage of our money. And the processes are cumbersome, our people are not able to, discounting is an issue. So here, this crisis gives us an opportunity, because now people, even after this lockdown, people are not very comfortable in using notes, because notes can also be carriers of virus. People are more comfortable now in using digital mode of transaction, using cards, tap and pay cards, using our app. So the things which we were pushing earlier, requesting people to use, but people are not using that much. Now I see there's a change in mood, and people are more likely to use digital mode of transactions, which of course as a company we always wanted, and if we are able to push it now during this crisis time, that will be a big boon for us and a big support to the people in ease of transaction.
Thank you, Mr. Bothra, for these insights. Here is our webinar on parking and COVID-19 by Paul Barter. He's a parking policy expert, and we now have the chance to benefit from his knowledge. Watch his webinar and get your question answered in our Teams forum.
Hello, I'm Paul Barter from Reinventing Transport and the Reinventing Parking podcast, and I'm going to talk about parking and this COVID-19 emergency and its aftermath. I'm planning to talk in 3 sections. The first section will be about parking and the depths of the crisis. The second one will be as cities are emerging from the crisis but not yet back to normal. And thirdly, what we might expect in the long run, or we might hope and try to achieve in the long run, maybe even hoping to build back better. So let's start with the depths of the crisis. Some cities are past that, and many cities are still in the midst of the pandemic crisis. An immediate thing that many cities have done in the middle of the crisis is to temporarily suspend parking management. So parking pricing is off, no parking enforcement. And that is mostly reasonable. It seems unreasonable to be charging for parking if the demand is almost gone. But be careful, parking enforcement, part of it at least, is about safety. And if you suspend parking enforcement completely, you may be endangering people. There'll be some dangerous parking which will cause accidents. Be careful. Cities also need to make sure that if parking management is still in place, that staff have safe work practices during the pandemic, of course. Parking wardens need to be kept safe. In the middle of the pandemic, many cities have initiated special deals for health workers or for other essential workers, free parking. I've seen this in many examples around the world. And of course, that is a great gesture and easy to implement, since normal parking demand is extremely low in the middle of the crisis. Many cities have also temporarily allowed parking facilities to be used for emergency uses. Hospitals have spilled out into parking areas in some cases. Parking areas have been used for testing facilities in some cases. Sometimes that's controversial if not enough provision is made for people to be tested if they don't own a car, but it still is a reasonable use of parking space. In most cities, sit-down restaurants are not operating, cafes are not operating for sit-down dining, and so deliveries, takeout is the norm, and there's a lot more need for curbside space for picking up, dropping off, and deliveries. One prominent way that parking has featured during this pandemic has been the repurposing of curbside parking for safe distancing. Sometimes this means removing a few vehicles, a few parking spaces, so that the queues outside busy shops can be accommodated safely and people can walk by without being too close. In some cases, it's extending footpaths to make them wider. In some cases, it's temporary pop-up bicycle lanes. And we've seen these all over the world, especially Latin America and Europe, and to some extent in North America too. Now, the parking industry, especially the off-street commercial parking garages and lots, just like many other businesses, have seen a huge drop in demand for their main service. And just like other businesses, that's causing hardship. Many employees either furloughed or let go. And the issues there are not unique to parking. It's the need there is to help various medium-sized small businesses cope with this immediate crisis and still be there after the crisis because they're services.
Thank you, Paul Barter. We are happy to have learned something once again. If you want to go more into detail, visit the website reinventingtransport.org. Throughout the day, we have the chance to see some footage from street films. They shared with us their impressions from the US. See New York as you have never seen it before.
One of the things you can hear most now is the sound of birds and the sound of ambulances. It's very eerie because it's silent for most of the day, except for those things. Hi, it's Clarence Eckerson from Street Films here again. It was about 3 weeks ago that I went out on my bicycle to show you how much the streets have changed with coronavirus restrictions going on. Back then, very few people were wearing masks because it was not recommended. Right now, I'm about to go out for my daily walk. Sometimes it's a run, sometimes it's a walk. Another thing that's interesting is just 3 weeks ago, there were no leaves on the trees, there were almost no flowers. Now spring has sprung and some of the days are absolutely lovely, and it feels a little weird from just a few weeks ago when it was often rainy and it was often very drab gray days. So let's check out what the streets look like here on a typical walk I'll do. So this is a little crazy. This is 34th Avenue in my neighborhood, and any normal rush hour day right around 5 like it is, bumper to bumper traffic for the most part, as people treat 34th Avenue as a alternative to Northern Boulevard when it gets backed up. I have some clips I've tweeted showing up to 20 blocks of gridlock at times. It shows just how bad it can get. Now there's light traffic. You could even call it sparse at times. As I mentioned, almost all the time I try to walk right down the middle of the street because you're definitely at least 6 feet, most times 10 or 12, 15 feet away from people out here in the middle of the street. You see a lot of other people doing that too because there's not enough separation on the sidewalk most of the time. The streets are largely devoid of traffic, but when somebody goes by you, it's usually at a very dangerous rate of speed. So here I am standing at the corner of 79th Street and 34th Avenue, where there was an extremely pitifully lame attempt at open streets for people to recreate and get food and visit pharmacies. Basically, this trial run by Mayor de Blasio was planned to fail. He required up to 3 or 4 NYPD officers per block. He said it could not be done without proper policing. The mayor shut it down after 10 days, saying, one, not enough people used it, which basically is absurd because people, and he included, said they were afraid of too much congregating. Very rarely did you have people getting too close to each other. You need to create a network of miles for it to work, and other cities are doing a fantastic job. Here you can see some awesome footage in Denver where they've done 13 miles and are reporting almost no police presence on the streets. Minneapolis has done 18, and some advocates are saying they didn't even know there were any police out at all for 18 miles. And in Oakland, they have announced they're doing an incredible 70 miles, almost 10% of the streets. And there they've put up barricades or sawhorses, just basically saying, this is not a through street. You can use it if you need to get to this street if you live here, but otherwise you cannot travel through here. Now here in New York City, to protect bus drivers, they are no longer having you pay, and now you board and depart at the back of the bus. Here I am on Northern Boulevard, a usually dangerous conduit of ever-present cars, trucks, buses, you name it. It's congested and it can be scary. But as you can see here as I pan, there's almost no traffic at times, just no traffic. It's actually as quiet as I've ever heard it, so that's quite amazing. I think I have some footage here to pop in of what Northern Boulevard might look like at a typical time on a weekend even. So now we finally get to hear a little bit of noise, and one of the reasons is that we're above the Grand Central. And right now it's about 5:30 p.m. This area is usually choked with cars and pollution. Many times the roadway congested with slow-moving vehicles. Nobody going anywhere. Right now there's a fraction of the vehicle you usually see at rush hour. But what's more amazing is how crisp the air is. I have stood over this roadway many times and can tell you, you can smell and taste the dirt and pollution in the air. Right now, there's none. The air is crisp and clear. As many of us have found out, Face ID no longer works when you're wearing a mask. Here we are on Junction Boulevard, which basically looks like a ghost town. Look at all these juicy parking spaces. I mean, if it is a normal day, any other day of the year, these spaces are all filled during business hours. So I'm pretty sure I have some footage of me riding through here last year around this time. And as you could see, there was no place to park. There was double parking, triple parking. You even had to slalom on your bike to get through. There are a few people walking around because there are a couple of restaurants and a grocery open. So I want to thank everybody for coming on my 4-mile walk, just seeing what's going on around my neighborhood. Anyway, I want to leave you with this, something uplifting and exciting. As you probably know, every night in major cities, people are thanking our emergency responders at 7 o'clock with a big cheer. And I'm getting back here just in time to see the event just about to start. Here down here is neighbor Billy, who comes out with the American flag every night and cheers everybody on at 7 o'clock.
Empty streets are the expertise of our next guest. She says she wants to recycle Indian cities, and she means it literally. She is an architect and urban planner, and she practices what she preaches, moving around on her bicycle in the hometown of Gurugram in North India. She is the co-founder of Raahgiri Day, India's first car-free day campaign. Please welcome Mrs. Sarika Panda Bhatt.
Hi, I'm Sarika Panda Bhatt. I'm working as an associate director in Nagarro, and I'm also co-founder of Raahgiri Foundation. Today, I just want to share how tactical urbanism can help in improving our transportation system in cities. So, tactical urbanism is basically a low-cost and temporary solution intended to improve the cities and transportation system. So, during this COVID crisis, how we can use this mechanism to get new ideas and innovation to improve the transportation system in our cities. For example, in stores, in takeaways, or in the waiting area of the bus stops can be improved through this mechanism with addressing the existing social distancing norms. And what I say is that, this is the DIY of urbanism, which is very quick, easy, and fun to do with involvement of the citizens of the city. The measures that basically promote social distancing can be easily adopted in the urban mobility area, especially during this COVID crisis. For example, standing in front of a bus stop or sitting arrangement in metros or buses. In addition to this, some bold steps can be taken by the city government. For example, creating new bike lanes, walking paths, or developing new public spaces. And this can be easily doable before getting some permanent infrastructure changes, which we don't know might fail for the safety purpose. So I think adopting tactical urbanism method is very easy and quick to improve the walking and cycling infrastructure in our cities. Transportation sector has very strong linkage to the air quality. If there was any doubt, the COVID crisis has cleared it. Cities like Delhi have seen massive improvement in air quality during the lockdown period. So, going way forward, what we have to think is how to improve the transportation system through active transportation like walking and cycling, shared mobility, and zero emission vehicles.
Thank you so much. This shows again the big problem. There aren't enough safe infrastructures for cycling. Engaging with public-private partnerships and communities can bring positive change. This also helps in scaling the change to a much larger level. Next, I would like to welcome Mrs. Kalpana Viswanath. She is the co-founder and CEO of Safetipin. Safetipin collects data about safety in public spaces through multiple sources, including the My Safetipin app. Kalpana Viswanath has always put a special focus on women's rights and mobility. Safetipin has worked with more than 30 cities in India and other countries.
Hi, I'm Kalpana Viswanath. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Safetipin. Replan our cities. For example, walking is a very important element of our streets, and we know that during this time of COVID-19, walking and bicycling are good ways of social distancing. We know that everyone doesn't have a private car, and if we encourage different ways of mobility that are inclusive, that are available to all, it will make our public spaces better. Globally, we've seen there's been an increase in domestic violence across countries, and this is a disturbing fact, that we know there's a continuum of violence between what takes place inside and outside homes. And while a lot of our focus has been on public spaces, the moving of all people into a private space has exacerbated that level of violence. On the other hand, women have played a great role in this period. The work of care has come to the fore. We know that we cannot survive as a people without care, whether it's care of children, care of elderly, food, as well as the care that is being done by those who manage our cities, the people who clean our cities, and the frontline workers, the doctors, the nurses, the cleaning people, everybody who is taking care of us during this period. A large percentage of these are women. And therefore, this period, I think, is an important time to look back in the future and say, this is a time when we recognize the work of care, and we know that we need to do something to make cities more caring and inclusive of diverse populations. Safetipin, the organization that I head, is a technology organization which is used to collect data that is bottom-up data, that is collective data, and that is robust and used to inform both policy, practice, and interventions in cities to make them more inclusive of women and all other excluded populations. I think as we move forward, we need to use technology. We need to have different forms of innovation. We need to hear the voices of the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, but use all of this to build more caring cities. And while social distancing is going to be part of our lives for a while, we need to look at how do we do so physical distancing, but continue to have vibrant cities. Thank you.
That was a very interesting perspective on the situation in India and the possibilities of technology to ensure women's safety. Thank you.
Up next, we would like to share some work in the city of Banjarmasin that Kota Kita is doing with the most vulnerable in the city. This is a pre-COVID situation, and we will look how the situation is going to evolve over time. Please enjoy the video.
Mobilitas saya kira bukan hanya penting untuk diri saya sendiri, tapi untuk semuanya, termasuk dengan mobilitas yang baik itu akan terkoneksi apapun dalam konteks kehidupan ini, baik sosial, ekonomi, pendidikan, dan lain sebagainya gitu.
Di sini selain kegiatan belajar mengajar, kami juga melakukan kegiatan pengabdian masyarakat seperti kerjasama sama Difabek untuk pelayanan transportasi penyandang disabilitas. Ya intinya membantu mobilitas mereka lah biar lebih efektif untuk menjalani di kehidupan sehari-harinya.
Dari proses kolaborasi ini sangat bermanfaat terutama bagi kami dan peserta didik kami karena ini pengalaman yang baru di Banjarmasin juga belum ada.
Tantangan kami ialah bagaimana kami mendesain motor roda 3 itu senyaman mungkin untuk kawan-kawan disabilitas.
Dalam kolaborasi ini ternyata dampaknya sangat besar buat kami itu sendiri.
Kalau dapat motor roda 3 insya Allah ya untuk bantu-bantu keluarga itu ya buat ngaji kalau orang perlu diantar itu kan kalau saya bisa terus saya antar.
Jadi aku harapannya kemana-mana misalnya ke pasar kada usah lagi lah diantar bila bisa mengendarainya. Jadi aku lebih kawan mandiri ya lo, itu harapanku.
Nah di saat ini kita ada program Transformatif Urban Mobility Initiative. Kita mulai menggagas banyak hal yang bisa membuka akses kepada kawan-kawan disabilitas maupun lansia agar bisa mengakses fasilitas publik.
Mari kayu imbai dengan spirit kolaborasi untuk mewujudkan kota Banjarmasin yang lebih layak huni dengan tetap mengedepankan kearifan lokal yang ada di kota Banjarmasin.
Our next guest, Nikola Medimorec, is an expert regarding data. Nikola supports SLOCAT on research and data collection for various topics related to sustainable transport and climate change.
Hello, my name is Nikola Medimorec and I work on data and research analysis for the SLOCAT Partnership on Sustainable Low-Carbon Transport. Thank you for inviting me to participate at TUMI TV. I'm very excited to give you a big picture overview of how mobility and the demand for certain transport modes has changed due to COVID-19. The SLOCAT partnership works on a variety of activities around COVID-19. The first response was to create a resource hub to collect articles, webinars, and key messages from the transport community. This hub is constantly evolving and accepting new entries, so please send us any valuable information that you would like us to post. On 24th April, we organized a virtual fireside chat featuring ITDP and TUMI in order to reflect on the first initial lessons of COVID-19 and also to look into the future and discuss any open questions and future outlooks. More such exchanges are planned for the coming weeks. We are also very excited to soon launch a blog space which will feature reflections directly from SLOCAT partners from across all modes and all sectors. Please let us know if you would like to contribute to this new series of the Morning Commute blog. We are keeping also an internal tracker of the transport dimension of stimulus packages to use for further advocacy exercises and analysis. Please contact us if you would like to explore collaboration on this topic. But in this presentation, I want to emphasize another activity where we analyzed major data sets to understand the impact of COVID-19 on different regions and different countries, as well as the impact on transport modes in these regions and countries. An initial analysis is published on the SLOCAT website, and I will show you the major findings of this analysis in this presentation. So, since early March, when COVID-19 was declared a pandemic by the World Health Organizations, we can observe a couple of changes in our daily lives. First, there was a rapid reduction of movement. The use of public transport reduced radically within a couple of days. And then also we received the general recommendation to stay at home, to stay safe, and only to go out for the essential trips. And so, like, from this we can already see that we assume that transport has been reduced and less people are moving around, but still we're asking the following question in this analysis that we want to prove with some more data. And these were, what's the impact of COVID-19 on mobility in different regions and different income country groups? Which transport modes are affected the most by the current circumstances? So that's why we then took the first global data sets that have been actually provided by the two tech giants Google and Apple, and analyzed them to indicate and to see what the impact of COVID-19 on transport actually is. Google analyzed the mobility to certain destinations as shown in this slide. Apple, on the other hand, they analyzed how the map service requests for driving, public transport and walking have changed since early January. Both of these data sets focus more on passenger transport, and they're more geared towards on the urban scale and not so much on the international transport or on national mobility. And also in both cases we have to acknowledge that it doesn't actually show the actual use of transport modes or like the passenger capacity or passenger activity. However, these data sets function as proxies indicating certain trends. So, and then here now to show you one of the first charts and figures of our analysis is where we looked at the Google's data, and we can really clearly see that COVID-19 led to major decline in mobility to all major destinations, and also here in this case it led to huge decline in the mobility to public transport stations. This decline started from mid-March and is still ongoing, and the reduction is more than 50% of the average base level of the pre-COVID-19 weeks. Then also by early April we see that the levels are at the lowest point, and there's even a slight tendency of increasing again, but still it's too early to say anything very detailed on this topic. The strongest decline, as you can see in this chart, is in Latin America and the Caribbean. Then putting the same data together for income groups shows that the highest impact has been in middle and high income countries. The decline of trips to public transport stations happened at a slower pace in low income countries, but by now you can see that the reduction of mobility to public transport stations is at a similar level as in high and low income middle income countries. A major reason for this first rapid decline in middle and high income countries could be that they are better globally connected, and the COVID-19 hit them earlier than in the low income countries. Then one of the 6 major destinations that Google also covers is the so-called residential mobility, which reflects people staying at home or just people traveling to places such as residential areas. And this is also the only area where we've actually seen increase of mobility compared to the average in January. And it shows more or less the impact of the stay-at-home recommendations, and maybe even very strict local or national lockdowns has works to a certain extent, and more people are staying within their residential areas. Then taking a look at Apple's data of queries on transport modes shows that again public transport has seen the strongest decline globally. At the lowest point, transport was 76 below the average baseline of the 13th January 2020. And walking and driving experience around 67-65% below average, but they already show a slight tendency to increase again, while public transport is still staying at a very lower level. Now, looking at the regions and how these transport how, for example, like in this case, the requests for public transport have changed over the past weeks, shows that the strongest decline has been in Oceania, and that actually, for example, in Asia, we see a very slow-paced decline, but again, by early May 2020, it reached very similar levels to what we had in other regions. Now, to conclude this presentation, I also try to plot the COVID-19 fatalities and some of these mobility aspects by shown before. So in this case, plotting the reduction, like the reduced percentage of trips to public transport stations against the confirmed official COVID-19 deaths per million people by the 17th April of 2020 as a snapshot example, shows that there are actually certain clusters by region, and for example, in the case of African countries, they experience a very low number of fatalities and also very relatively low reduction of mobility to public transport stations. While on the other hand, we have, for example, also like Europe, which have large diversity of death per million people, and also a large diversity of how mobility has been reduced. And as I previously said, that Latin America shows very strong impacts. You can also see in this figure that even though relatively there have been very low number of fatalities by the 17th April 2020, the reductions in mobility to transport stations have been very severe and in general very high throughout all of the Latin American countries. Now, this analysis has of course certain limitations, and it doesn't show the full picture, and it also doesn't show the causality or the cause of why we have these declines in mobility. And there are also still many outstanding questions that I try to collect here in this slide, and like kind of the four major questions that are outstanding are, for example, like because this was currently a snapshot of first couple of weeks, but what are the long-term consequences, and what are the consequences on sustainable transport and on overall transport decarbonization? How is it also how are the stimulus packages going to impact the modes and mobility, and then can these short-term solutions maybe really become something more important? That's kind of the first bulk of questions. The second bulk of questions is around the transport emissions. This current data doesn't kind of really be translated into emissions or into how much pollution is being avoided currently. So we might predict certain transport emissions reductions, but then how does it go across the modes and how different regions, and how is the emission reduction for passenger and freight and so on. So these are like kind of this major a very open topic. And then we're also wondering about the impact of freight and logistics and delivery. There have been also very illustrative examples so far, and we don't have any global data sets on this area right now. Then a great thing that we see, and that I believe many of you will talk about, are the short-term solutions that have been implemented in many cities around the world. And also the open question is then, will these be maintained, and how are they going to have an impact on mobility in these regions, and how are they going to help support other sustainable transport modes? So that was from my part. Thank you very much for your attention, for listening. You can find the complete analysis on our website. The URL is provided here on this last slide. And also you can find me on Twitter at @ni_medi, and there I can respond and react to any of your comments and questions, and we can take this discussion further. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikola, for your analysis. It is shocking how much our mobility demand dropped the last weeks. Many large companies like Google and Facebook already expand their working from home policies. That means we could see a long-term effect on mobility demand.
Thank you very much. It is my great pleasure to hand over to my colleague Daniel Moser in Cologne, and he is going to talk with Shreya from ITDP and Barry from Kota Kita.
Thank you very much, Armin. We're now live on TUMI TV with Shreya, Gadepalli and Barry Keaton. Today we cover the globe and we're starting with some key partners from Asia. And this is ITDP in India, as well as Barry Began from Kota Kita in Indonesia. So with both of them, we have a very long-term and valuable relationship, and we're happy to have with us today in this live Q&A, a short discussion with Shreya and Barry on the aspects of how mobility is being shaped by COVID-19 in India and in Indonesia. We are very happy to have you here, and I'm hoping that we can also see Barry live. Thank you very much for being here. Shreya, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you very much. So how can you tell me how is the situation in India, especially looking at public transport?
Since mid-March, we've been in a lockdown and most public transportation services were shut down in this period. It's only the last week or so that some of the services have resumed for general public. Bombay was an exception, or Mumbai was an exception in this period where it ran bus services for people as well, other than essential workers. But other cities like Bangalore have only started, and Delhi have only started services recently. And it's not surprising that the ridership is still pretty low, but it would gradually ramp up. And we at ITDP, we are in the middle of doing a pan-India survey to find out how travel behaviors might change. And these are very preliminary results, but what we've found is something like 80% of people who used to use public transportation still would like to return to public transportation. So that's very positive news in the sense that people do want to come back to public transportation, despite some people having fears that public transportation might become a hotspot for COVID spread. Having said that, then we'll have to see exactly how it pans out in the coming days once the lockdown is, it's removed or it's made less intensive, and people start moving around more freely within cities.
Thank you, Shreya. Barry, I also would like to welcome you live on air at TUMI TV. Can you hear us, Barry? Would really love to hear what you can say from the Indonesia perspective. How is COVID-19 affecting mobility in Indonesia?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I can say a few words about it. Actually, right now we're in the middle of we just had our Eid holidays. So I think there in the past week or so there had been a lot of concerns about commuting, and a lot of people have been moving across the region, from Jakarta back home to their hometowns or villages. So I think at the end of this holiday, I think we're going to expect to see people coming back into the major cities. And I think that's something to be looked at, and what kinds of protocols we have to think about. And I think in terms of general mobility, everything has been very limited in Indonesia, especially Jakarta, where I'm currently based right now. I think one of the major industries that have been affected is actually our motorcycle taxis, which has been a booming new innovative solution for mobility in the last 5 years. But now, I think the market has really gone down, and much of that is a lot of people are being affected economically from that.
That's very interesting, Barry. And I think informal transport, what you just mentioned with the motorcycles, I believe, is also a very crucial element of transport in India. I would really like to hear also, Shreya, given Barry's perspective, what is your view on the impact on informal transport in India during this crisis?
It's been really bad on the informal transport sector, because not only was formal public transportation shut down, but at least they can depend on some kind of government support eventually to come back. For example, in Karnataka, in Bangalore's case, the government ensured that the salaries of all the staff were paid despite the lockdown. But when it comes to informal transit, they are left to themselves, and Many of them are single owner operators, or they use or they rent vehicles from other owners to run their daily operations. And in India, our estimates, and these are very rough estimates, suggest that something like 3/4 of all public transportation trips are on informal modes. Now, that's a very huge number in a country like India, and all of it has been shut. It's not resumed yet. It might gradually resume once the lockdown is over. But in this period, those who've been operating, whether they're share auto rickshaws or even private buses, have been very, very badly hit. And I'd especially say the folks who operated on the ground, the drivers, the conductors of these buses or share auto rickshaws are the ones who are most badly hit.
That's a fantastic insight into the very severe situation we're seeing right now. And I believe that this is what you're describing is also putting in an emphasis on the aspects of how marginalized groups in general are also affected by the crisis. And I really would like to take this to Barry. You have co-founded an NGO called Kota Kita, and you have been named the winner of the TUMI Global Mobility Challenge also for your design proposals on Banjarmasin city in Indonesia to improve inclusive design aspects for people with disabilities. So I really would like to hear also from your side, Barry, how do you see the situation for marginalized groups, and especially for people with disability, looking also at the program of Kota Kita?
Yeah, so thank you. So maybe I'll first speak to the impact on the marginalized group first. I think one of the biggest concerns here in Indonesia is that, as a country, we've been working hard to bring people out of poverty, and the marginalized groups are the most vulnerable. So I think this sort of economic impact, impacts on mobility has really sort of pushed people back into, worse condition. And I think particularly for people with disability whose employment options and opportunities are already limited in the first place, right? So I think in some ways that has become a big concern. And I think in relation to our current project, we wanted it to be sort of empowering, sort of an empowerment economic tool for people to become self-employed and be able to drive their own vehicles for taxi purposes. But I suppose this will also throw a bit of a wrench. But I think we should try to think differently about the future, where I think there are other options of changing the type of business more into driving logistics and deliveries, which I think a lot of motorcycle taxis are dependent on now. So I think hopefully there's a sort of a silver lining at the end.
I think this is a very good also summary from your point of view, and I really would think that we hopefully can take this as an opportunity also to do the improvements and do the public policy measures which are needed in order to create a more equal and more just society for everybody. I think from that point of view, I would like to ask you, Shreya, also is around the impact on finances which we are seeing around India, where people are not allowed to work, are not allowed to go to work, but also seeing the huge volumes of transport going down, where also a lot of jobs depend on people working in the transport sector. So could you give us a little bit of an overview of how you see the current economic situation in India?
I'd certainly say, and a lot of people are concerned about this, that there would be a huge recession because of the COVID lockdown. Now, I'm not suggesting that the lockdown was not required. Certainly, lockdown was important for us to get our medical systems in place so that we could take care of the peak as and when it comes, and also to flatten the peak. Having said that, this has hugely impacted employment. Transportation sector accounts for nearly a fifth of all employment in the country, and that's pretty huge, right? Especially amongst men, that it's a big means of employment. Now, pretty much all of them, like I said, 75% of the transport industry is informal. And even in the formal sector, there are lots of informal workers who work in support functions, which means that the number of people who are in the informal sector is even more than that. And all of these people presently have no means of income. And that can very easily push them back into poverty. They were not only at the edge of poverty, but they can easily get pushed into poverty again. And that's a big threat. And we need to figure out how we can support them in days going forward, how informal sector could be brought back on its feet, and how and this needs to be done. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Shreya. Barry, looking at Indonesia also, is this a situation which you could mirror, which you see similar in Indonesia? Can you maybe describe that kind of economic impact a little bit closer?
Yeah, I think in Indonesia the situation is quite similar to Indonesia, given the fact that we're also a labor surplus economy and that there's a lot of informal activities, and a lot of them depend on having customers on the streets, and there's no way of kind of doing it through emails and such. So I think there's a lot of economic impact there, and even in some factories that have to close because demand has closed down, so that also has quite a big impact. Although I think in Indonesia, one thing that's been quite interesting is that we, especially around the holiday season and Ramadan leading up to Eid, there has been a sort of a spike in charity, sort of just citizen-driven charity. A lot of people are, and I think it's at the scale where it's considerable for the economy. It's almost like a self-driven economic stimulus. I think even within the motorcycle taxi services, people are upping their tips or even giving the food to the drivers, and so there's a lot of grassroots activities that are happening that I think we feel quite optimistic about.
Thank you. This is surely a fantastic insight also from Indonesia, and it's interesting to see how people are providing that stimulus out of their own sense of necessity. Surely also we see that there is a need for government intervention, especially looking at infrastructure, which usually is a big ticket item, where usually infrastructure investments have to and are coming from governments. And the question is also how are we using the stimulus which is now being prepared? How is that being used in Asia? And is there a drive towards changing the transport trajectory by building more sustainable transport infrastructure? And maybe Shreya, you can give us a little bit of a discussion. Is there a discussion or a debate in India around this topic that we would need to have a green stimulus, an economic recovery which looks at climate aspects also when we take infrastructure investment into account?
I'd say things are in flux right now. There isn't a clear pathway. The national government certainly is very concerned about the situation and has come out with some stimulus packages, but the verdict is still out as to how it might support the economic revival and whether it's going to be a green revival or not. We, at least on our part at ITDP, are working with at least some of the arms of the government. We have started a series to train cities across the country with the support of the Smart Cities mission on how they could be a green revival rather than a dirty revival, if you will, which is focused more on personal motor vehicles, a green revival in the transportation sector. How today itself, we have a webinar starting right after this one on how cycles and walking and cycling could be the ways to revival in Indian cities, and how can we implement them. So I think there are talks about it. The private bus industry also has been making a lot of noise about how there needs to be a stimulus package, because it's not about just their survival, it's also about how transportation itself is available to cities. And I'd say there's no option but to adopt a green revival in the country. Otherwise it would be a pretty sad situation.
Thank you, Shreya. And thanks to both of you. Today we cover the globe with TUMI TV, and I would like to thank you again for your very impressive insights. The challenges we are seeing in India and Indonesia in public transport, in public space, and also your remarks on the impact on climate and green recovery are very, very valuable to us. And I would love to thank you also for your great partnership over the last years. And with these words, I like to give back to our production and continue with the program of TUMI TV. And thank you very much, Shreya and Barry. Have a very good day.
Daniel,
thank you very much for this exchange.
Minutes, maybe a minute.
Let's see what's coming next on TUMI TV. We started the day with impressions from Asia, and soon we will take a look at Africa and Europe. In a few minutes, we will have the honor to speak to Norbert Bartle. He is the Parliamentary State Secretary to the German Federal Minister for Economic Cooperation and Development. In between, enjoy some material of our partners and make sure you check out all the material on our website.
The scale and pace of disruption in the mobility sector is unlike anything we've seen before. And it's giving us an incredible opportunity to reshape urban transportation to better respond to the needs of the 21st century. We want to create cities that are sustainable, equitable, joyful, and just.
Micromobility is a new term we use to include all the variations of small vehicles or personal mobility devices. While this started with bike sharing, we now have the rise of electric scooters and electric bikes.
Integration of the different modes is key for successful mobility. Today, we have the scooters. Tomorrow, we don't know. So we have to be ready to move quickly.
Mobility services have to actually consider the needs of the people.
In order to understand how new mobility services can promote equity, we need to understand the behavior, mobility needs, and capabilities of vulnerable user groups.
Public spaces and public transport restricts women's access and right to the city. The challenges that we face are related to improving spatial dynamics, such as infrastructure and reporting mechanism of sexual harassment, but we also have to change socio-political dynamics that have solidified a power relationship that justifies and naturalizes gender violence.
I would say that in transport, using a card is a form of herd mentality, because everybody seems to be using it, and then everybody else is using it, despite the fact that they're always in traffic. In practice, leveraging the loss aversion can be really a good way to change behaviors. In other words, we should aim to use some of our weaknesses and turn them into our strengths.
I believe that the new mobility services represent a big challenge for cities, and we need to think how they can be integrated to benefit all citizens. We need to understand how to price transportation services and the business model for passengers and freight transport in cities.
Technologies do not have a purpose. It is the people they serve that give them a purpose. We need to see urban mobility as an integrated whole between behavior, system, and policy.
I think an exciting challenge for us is to understand the economics of new mobility better, to understand how they interact with people and with societies. This will help us figure out how governments can help shape new mobility to ensure that it helps to achieve the wider goals of our societies, like equity and sustainability.